So first we're going to get the user ID, which we'll store inside the user ID variable. So again, we're going to go to the session array and use the key user ID. Okay, then we're going to get the time. That's the current time. We're going to use the time function. Okay, and then we're going to run a query which will create a new note. So the query is going to be as following. So we're inserting a new note in the notes table. So insert into the notes table. So we're going to specify the columns first, and then we're going to specify the values that we'd like to insert in those columns. So let's start with the columns. So we're going to have the user ID, note, and time. Okay. All right, and then the values are going to be as following. So for the user ID, we're going to use our user ID variable. Okay. Then the note is going to be empty. So in the notes column, we're going to have empty content. And then for the time, we're going to use the time variable. And make sure you don't forget the single quotes. Okay. So now we're going to execute our query and store the results in the results variable as we've done before. So we're going to use the function MySQLi underscore query, and we're going to use the link variable and the query. Okay, then we're going to check if the query was successful. Okay, if it was not successful, so we're gonna look at the opposite of results. So if it's not successful, results is going to be false, and that's going to be true. So in that case, we're going to return error into our Ajax call. Okay, so we're just going to echo error. All right, then if everything goes fine and the query is successful, we're going to return the ID of the new note. So there is a function that we used before, which will return the auto-generated ID, okay, used in the last query. That function is MySQLi insert ID. Okay, so we're going to echo this. So this function will take as a parameter our link variable. Okay. So I'm going to write that as a comment. So this function is going to return the auto-generated ID used in the last query. Okay, in our case, the last query is this one. Okay, so you're going to get the ID of the newly inserted note. All right, so before we test our code, I'm going to make a couple of changes. So there is an S missing from values in our query, and also in the JavaScript file, in the for statements, we need to use semicolons, okay, instead of commas. So here we go. So now let's save our code and refresh the page. Okay, so now if I click on the Add Notes button, we can see our text area appearing and our button All Notes. Okay, now let's have a look at our table and see if we've got a new record. So let's refresh, and we can see our new record right there. So our note is empty. Okay, as it doesn't have any content there. All right, now let's test our alert message. Okay, so if we go back to the PHP file and make something or make an error in our query, let's see what we get. So you can see our alert message there. Okay, so it's a collapsible alert message, and we can close it. Okay. Now let's try again with a correct one and make sure that everything works. Perfect. All right, now if we go back to our Ajax calls, just as we used a success parameter, we need to use an error parameter as well. Okay, so we need to add an error parameter in our first Ajax call as well as in our second one. So the error parameter corresponds to the Ajax call failing or not going through. Okay, so we're going to define a function. Okay, which will show an alert message. All we're going to do is place content in the same collapsible alert message and just showing the message using some animation. So you can use the same content we used right here. Okay, and just change the content of the message, saying something like there was an error with the Ajax call. Okay, please try again. All right, and we need to do the same thing here. Okay. Okay. We can try the Ajax call failing by giving the wrong PHP file, for example. So if we reload the page, we can see the Ajax call. We can see the error corresponding to the Ajax call failing. Okay. All right. Now, if we look at the final app, if we click on Add Notes, we can see the text area and the All Notes button. So you can either start typing the new notes or go back to the list of notes by clicking on the All Notes button. So let's write some code that will enable the user to click on this button and go back to the list of notes. So we're going to go to this section. Okay. So we're going to access the button using its ID. So the ID of this button, if you remember, is All Notes. Okay. So once we click on this button, we're going to execute the following function. So basically what we're going to be doing is that we're going to load the notes as we did earlier when the page was loaded. Okay, so we're going to use more or less the same code we used right there, okay, for the Ajax call. So let's copy paste that code. Okay. The only thing that's going to change is that when you click on that button, you want to hide these two elements and show all those elements. Okay, so you're going to use the show hide function inside the success parameter. Okay, So we're gonna show some elements and hide certain elements. Okay, so the elements we're going to show are going to be the Add Notes button, the Edit button, and the notes. And the elements to hide are going to be the All Notes button, the text area, okay, which corresponds to the elements of ID Notepad. And that's it. Okay, so let's save and try our code. Okay, it works perfectly. So at the moment, when we create the new notes, the empty notes, and then we click on that button, we don't see any empty notes. And the reason why is because if you remember, when we loaded the notes in the load notes file, we deleted all empty notes. Okay. All right. So in the next video, we're going to write code which will save any updates to the new notes once we start typing the new notes. Okay. And this will apply also when editing an existing note.